As a former debater, I would encourage the candidates to focus on 4 areas. Number 1, they have to know their issues. Number 2, they have to anticipate the arguments to those issues and how they would respond. 3, they need to know about what their opponents are arguing for. And number 4, how they would attack their opponent's issues. In the debates for the nomination, the candidates need to realize that the goal is to win the nomination, not necessarily to just win the debate. So as such, there are 3 areas that they need to focus on. Number 1, they need to avoid saying anything that is going to cause them to drop out. If you have a bad statement in the debate and you have to drop out, you can't win the nomination. The second thing is that they have to be likable. People want to vote for people who they like. So the candidates have to balance the need to be likable with the need at the same time to be aggressive and go after other candidates. And the third area, which is not necessarily the candidate, but they need to make sure that they have the support system behind them so that they can either capitalize on the debate or mitigate any problems that they've had. And what we've seen is that some candidates have had a hard time building on their successes. I think that the amount of work done during congressional recesses is an illustrative point of the Democrats' focus. What we've seen during the October recess is that they held 3 hearings and depositions for the Ukraine matter. But yet during the government shutdown, which occurred during the congressional recess around Christmas time, Democrats and Republicans were not working, even though thousands of paychecks for government employees were not being sent. So what we see is that the Democrats were much more concerned about getting the impeachment done than making sure that they had a deal to avert a government shutdown. One of the main issues with the House's rules on the impeachment inquiry is that they are not designed so that we find out the truth of what happened in the Ukraine controversy. Every story has multiple sides, but unfortunately the rules are not created such that these sides come out. We talk about due process concerns, that the defense should have these rights so that they can put forth their issues. And it's not only important for the fairness to the defense, but it allows us to find out what really happened. In this case, these rights are not available. We have had secret testimony in which cross-examination of witnesses has not been allowed to happen. The President's counsel has not been at the secret hearings or at the hearings on the Intelligence Committee. And lastly, Republicans are not allowed to call all the witnesses that they feel are important. So you put these 3 things together, and we're not going to get a full view of what happened in the Ukraine controversy. To pass legislation in the Senate is basically a 2-step process. The first step, required by Senate Rule 22, requires that 60 votes of the 60 members of the Senate vote for cloture, which is ending debate. The second step is the voting on the legislation itself. The so-called nuclear option has been used to get around the 60-vote requirement for both judicial and administrative nominees. So many have argued that we should be using the nuclear option for legislative matters. The problem with that is that the majority leader or those in power are changing the Senate rules so they can focus on their goals. The problem is once a democracy starts changing the rules, when those in power start changing the rules, the whole basis of democracy changes, that we do not have procedures that keep us in line. Why has former Majority Leader Harry Reid and Senators Warren and Harris called for an end to this 60-vote requirement? The likely reason is that they think Democrats are going to win the presidency, lose the Senate, but hold the House. And they want to make sure that their legislative goals are passed. They realize that they won't be able to get 60 votes in the Senate, but they think that they could get 51. And that's why they want to lower the threshold for passing legislation in the Senate.